All right. Good day, everyone. It's Carlos, and I am here with Kim McCarthy. We are here for another Speaking Bluntly podcast with Harvest Plume magazine and also the Cannabis sessions. Kim, I know you have been doing a lot of traveling this week. You have a new hairdo, which I truly love. Before we hit the go live button, we had a little conversation about that. But anyway, so how was your week, Kim?
It's fast and furious. Truth be told, and this is what we talked about before going live, I'm originally from Ohio, but I haven't been back in Ohio in so long, much less Kentucky. And it's actually Louisville, Kentucky is where I was, and that's only 2.5 hours away from my hometown. So it was kind of surreal to be back in a way my own stomping ground. But it was very nice. WIFS event went very, very well. Oh, the Rocky Mountain chapter, we got best chapter.
Oh,
And so that was,
congratulations. That's
yeah,
awesome. That is
yeah. So
super.
huge shout out to Ashley Johnson and Becky Brothers and Sarah Caruso, Tony Corfey. It's they are just wonderful sisters.
Nice.
So
Very cool. Very cool. You know, it's interesting. You were in Louisville, which is my neighboring state. You know, I'm in Indiana. I guess I'm a Hoosier is what they call it here in Indiana. But interesting enough, Kentucky, I think, is for the Midwest, is one of the leading hemp producers in the state. They've done a lot in terms of converting their tobacco farms into hemp farms, and you were right there. So that's kind of cool. But I'm interested to hear this story. I think you have a great story to share in regards to your hair and specifically what you do with that. So why don't you share for our listeners a little bit more about your work with that?
absolutely. I'm very excited. It makes me kind of sad that I started so late. 2013, my hair was just really, really long. And what am I going to do with it? That type of thing. And, you get a certain age and you just look like an old hag anyway.
Oh,
So,
whatever. Listen to you. Stop. You're only as old as you make up your mind to be, Kim.
so I, I, um, on a whim, I happened to have so much length in the hair that I could donate 10 inches and it was still below my shoulders. And I thought, well, of course, I'm going to donate it. And after that, I realized, my hair just kind of grows on its own. I don't have to do anything about it. And a thought came to me of a friend of mine when I used to live in Arizona, and her daughter has alopecia, and all the wig drama that goes along with that. And soon after that time, of course, we're at that age where a lot of our friends and girlfriends are getting cancer.
Mhm.
And so a very close friend of mine from high school, she was going through it as well. So I thought, why not keep doing this? So I
Right.
just donated, I think it was a week ago,
Hmm.
yes, tomorrow, that I hacked off almost 10 inches, and that's going to Wigs for Kids. And it makes me so happy. If you've ever seen a video of a child getting hair, there was a cute little video I saw of a girl getting some lady like crochets hair.
Uh-huh.
Like
Oh, yeah.
yarn to make it look like, Rapunzel or
Sure.
something. And this little girl got this yarn wig, and she just burst into tears.
Mm.
And and I'm getting emotional, but that makes me feel like, oh my gosh. So, imagine when they get real hair and they get that feeling, or like hair in the mouth,
Yep.
things that annoy us.
Hmm.
Um, so for me, that keeps me going to keep those scissors out of my hair every year and a half.
Right. Well, I think that's very admirable of you to do that. So that's super terrific, and I think you're right. I think it's alarming when you really take a look at the amount of people. Like you could go into a room and, hey, a show of hands, how many of you have had a family member or friend, direct person that has been touched by cancer, and the alarming rates that is occurring. So, and then obviously when it affects the children, the young ones, it's even more challenging with that. And it does get, I've lost a sister to lung cancer. I also recently lost a brother-in-law to colon cancer. And so it does hit close to home from those aspects. And so in part, Kim, I think that's why the work that we're doing with Rogue 420, with Harvest and Plume, the cannabis sessions is just so important for the community. There was a great article that came out today, and I skimmed it. I didn't read the whole thing, but the headline. The headline always has to catch you. But anyway, it was in regards to the amount of people who are willing or who are now in support of medical cannabis, and in part, it's been a lot achieved because of CBD and cannabidiol. Like people are starting to understand a lot more in terms of, hey, you know what? This person is doing it and having this outcome. This person is doing it, and several other people, and now thousands of people are doing it. There must be something going on that's making that work. I mean, I'm not sure. I can't figure it out, but
What's the common denominator?
yeah. So I think it's key in terms of the education. I saw another link that University of Southern California now has 3 approved clinical studies in regards to medical cannabis. Maybe it was cannabidiol, CBD, but these things are starting to occur, and it's just very exciting.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of time this week to scroll through, but once in a while a headline will come up and I want it. But if you've ever been to a conference, they always have the worst possible internet connection. So I'm
You
just
think they have the
trying to
best and they have
connect.
the worst, right?
Oh my. So all I know are the headlines. I don't know any details. But the same thing, I've been reading about how, um, like with, there was a recommendation on, who was it, darn it, who just had to destroy like $65 million worth of harvest.
Mm,
I can't remember the name, but
hmm.
anyway, people are calling in and saying, "Hey, don't be taking that down. Take it in for scientific research."
Right.
And the possibilities that could come from all that. So yeah, sorry, a little off subject, but I'm
Well,
with you.
I think in part that we are winning. I think people are starting to, open up to it. Even some of the most staunch critics, the people that just their mind frame's not opening up to it at all. Which that takes time, and I think that we need to be, mindful of that as advocates, of this industry. In part, I had a great conversation today. I was visiting family in Greensburg, Indiana, which is about an hour and a half out of Indianapolis. And it was some farmers, and we were out in the fields and talking about the crops and everything. And so it gave me an opportunity to talk about hemp and talk about, whether it's utilizing it as a rotation crop or these industries that are evolving. And interesting enough, they were plugged into it. They were like, hey, yeah, there was a couple of farmers here nearby that decided to go ahead and try it and plant some and so forth. And um, but I think in part, I think one of the most important things, kind of like what you alluded to, is the after. What are you going to do in terms of growing it? What are you going to do with it after that point? And so I think I've heard it numerous times from Purdue has a huge hemp program, Purdue Hemp. I'm not sure if you've heard about it before, but maybe sometime you could come to Purdue and check it out. It's a great program. But that's one of the first things that they would say is that, people are going to be jumping into the industry, but know who your buyer is. That's the most, before you start planting into the ground, who is your buyer? If you're not going to be vertically integrated, who's your buyer for that hemp that you're going to be raising? And you brought out a perfect point where they're like, okay, have it. What am I going to do with it now?
Right. 65 mil gone. Amazing.
And just the time and labor and the resources and everything involved with it. I mean, that's such a long process. And but we are starting to see some of these companies come online. I know you shared the links. I always follow your LinkedIn profile, and you shared that the factory in, I believe it was Kentucky or Tennessee, or
Oh, I really wanted to go there. I was hoping that I would have a bigger break from
yeah,
WIFS to sneak
they're
down,
online
but
now, right? They're online.
yeah, I talked to him. We're chatting now.
Awesome. Well, maybe what we could do is be nice to, maybe once they're up and running, maybe even schedule them for guests and come in and talk about their factory and their applications. And I think in part, from what I've been told, they already have orders literally coming in from like Home Depot, Lowe's. I don't want to speak out of turn, or maybe they don't. But from my understanding, that's part of the reason why this is so exciting, because they are getting up online and they do have such an interest for hempwood.
Exactly. The brief message that we were exchanging, um, basically is like, we don't have enough revenue to advertise, but we would love to be a part of this and help us share the message of hemp, and if you could put us, and I was like, absolutely, we need to know about these things.
Yeah. I was muted. Sorry. That we do need to share these things, and that brings me to the next type of conversation, and that's just catching up with everything Harvest and Plume. So, what is anything that you'd like to discuss in terms of your most recent publication or any upcoming that you have going on? I know you work so hard behind it to get things organized, and I know that has to take a considerable amount of work. So, I want to make sure that we share with our listeners about the magazine. And yes, we are completely plugging it. So make sure you go to Harvest and Plume, check it out. Read it. It's a masterpiece work. I truly enjoy it. So any thing that you'd like our listeners to really tune into on this month's edition?
Yeah, thank you very much. For October, it's starting off with hempcrete. And if you've been following since we launched in, I think it was August, they're always like hemp communities, always talking about hemp communities. I don't know if that's going to be the actual name of the place, but that's the best thing we have right now. And you'll see that first we describe what hemp communities is and how people are going to, how we expect people to live there. And then with this issue, it's talking about the actual structures. So zero waste and all of the beauty of hempcrete, the pesticide free, mold free, la 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 la. And so next month, and that's when I started talking to Hempwood in Kentucky, saying, hey, we were talking about the structure. Now we're going to be talking about the inside, how home improvements. And so that's where the conversation started. And I'm really looking forward. If anyone else is watching out there who has some hemp-based home improvement product, please let me know. I want to get it in the magazine and maybe into hemp communities.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm so glad you said that, because there are some emerging new companies that are starting up with some of these really great ideas. It was interesting because a few months ago I ordered some of my boys. They do grappling, jiu-jitsu, all that kind of stuff, and their gi that I ordered for them, it came in, and part of it's made with hemp. And at the bottom of the gi, it says hemp on the bottom of it. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's like, and I didn't even know when I ordered it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Look
probably
how
because
they're just mainstreaming it. Drip, drip,
yeah,
drip.
yeah. Well, in part, I mean, I think because it's much probably more durable, and those gis get dirty and everything. You imagine in the laundry how many times, and then I'm not sure if you saw the article where I think Levi's is now going to start introducing hemp into some of their clothing. So I mean, there's no stopping this momentum, and I think there's going to be more and more companies are going to be like getting on the hemp train definitely soon.
Yeah, isn't it funny because Levi Strauss, of course, they came out with the first jeans or denim material, excuse me, and it seems like they're coming full circle back to it. Granted, it was made out of cotton, but they were wearing that item when they're harvesting and working the hemp fields. So for me, it all comes full circle on that.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
yeah,
a great
that's
marketing plug for them.
it. You know what? You should contact them and see if they can't, use that in advertisement. Start plugging it now. Yeah, and you recently just your travel, and I applaud you for being here today. I thought for sure that, oh gosh, she's going to be exhausted from traveling, because it seems like the flights that come out of the Midwest, there's always like a 2 or 3, even like next day layovers for some reason and heading out west from here. So hopefully, good.
It was Midway. Midway is like the Bermuda Triangle. And this is the God's honest truth. So my gate, I flew from Louisville to Chicago at Midway, and then here to Denver. And people were all just walking around, just aimlessly looking for this mysterious gate called A4B. There's no A12B, A3. No, there's just someone just said, let's call it A4B. and they didn't know exactly where to put it, so it's kind of off of A but nowhere near B. So anyway, I got there right when the door was closing. He said, I have 2 Kims, are you one of them? Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, let me on, please. Don't leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else is on your calendar? Do you have any other upcoming events that are occurring in? Yeah, I know that I think here in the Midwest, one of the organization is doing. It's called Hemp at the Crossroads, and it's in November. And I would love to invite the founder of the Midwest Hemp Council on to do one of our podcasts with us. Her name's Jamie, very dynamic individual. I think it'd be a lot of fun for her to come in and talk about her work. And she's lived and breathed it the past like at least 15 years. And her advocacy is in part one of the reasons why Indiana, our farmers, Purdue even has hemp in the ground. Pretty neat story. A couple of the farms here was their first harvest for hemp, I think in like 70 plus years in the state. And so these it showed pictures of the farmers, and they were actually, doing the hanging up for the drying. And the article was like, for the first time in plus years, Indiana has been harvested. So pretty cool story.
And isn't that cool? That's not the only one I've seen. I see a lot of them, believe it or not, on LinkedIn as opposed to any other social media.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, people are getting back to not only the farming roots, but also respecting the plants and what the plant eventually becomes as product. And it's amazing to see all of that in a professional social media like LinkedIn.
Sure. Yeah. And more expansion in terms of the social platforms that are accepting it. And LinkedIn, there's a tremendous amount of resources in there in terms of contacts. I was hesitant for a long time of joining LinkedIn because I was like, well, I'm not looking for a job, so I'm not sure, why I would be on LinkedIn. And then I had some friends that were like, no, you don't get it. It's more than that. And they're like, just go build a profile and you will see. And I'm like, okay, that was like 6 months ago, and now I'm 600 connections plus. I'm like, oh, I get it now.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I learned some interesting stuff this week. I was actually working to try to identify a potential company for CBD isolate. We're looking at doing a couple different things with some of our products, and so we're thinking about looking at like water soluble, some of the different things that are occurring. And through part of our research, we kept trying to identify in regards to USDA organic products, and whether it's hemp and I, through our research, we didn't find this out. Now there's a site that you can go to verify whether or not someone is a truly organic hemp farm. It's a USDA site, and they list the companies that are organic, so that way one knows. But we had at one time incorrectly. What's that?
I love that.
Yeah, so we had incorrectly listed on our site for a minute that our isolate was organics, organic, and we couldn't do that. We had to change the language around because you can have the grow and then the processing identified as organic, but because of the process and the chemicals that are introduced to make it into an isolate, those chemicals and things are not organic. So therefore, like really no one should be marketing CBD isolate as organic. You can say that the hemp is sourced from the isolate is sourced from an organic farm, but you can't just say that the isolate is, because that doesn't exist, because the FDA hasn't taken that, the USDA hasn't taken that step yet. But in part, they're working to get that accomplished. But I found that out that week, so I thought that was interesting to share, because in my years of research and knowing, I never knew that until I talked to someone that was able to explain why that you can't do that as far as the organic labeling.
Interesting. I think we need to have an episode just all about that.
We could, have one of the industry professionals. Now, some of your oils, your full spectrum oils, those are more of the natural. They're not as refined with some of those chemicals that are introduced. So some of the oils you can, but in terms of just the isolate, whether it's THC isolate, whether it's water soluble isolate, those particular lines, you can't. You can list up to that's sourced from an organic hemp farm, and they're processing, but that final step to say so it's interesting, and I'd never known that, and we've been going back and forth trying to figure out, okay, well, why isn't anyone labeling it, and why are some people are labeling it, and what makes the difference? And so we had to do a little bit of research to figure that process out.
Yeah, I that's fascinating. I know that you're probably thinking, really, but it is, because I don't deal with packaging.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and in part, that was just one of the interesting things. And then when you start talking to some of these people who have been in the industry for a long time, they're like, "Oh, and let me tell you something else about that." And you're like blown away, like, "Okay, I'm not sure why I didn't know that." But again, it's just part of this, emerging, economy, emerging products that people are learning and discovering about. And I think that's what makes it so much fun and interesting.
Now that you have that information, do you look at regular produce? Like I think it was somewhere on LinkedIn on one of the cannabis groups, and they had circled or highlighted grapes, and it said like this is I don't know, an organic or whatever, vegan something or other, and everyone's laughing about it and saying grapes are never ever, receive, whatever this pesticide is or whatever that is. So it became this really big joke about packaging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in terms of the next step, I think I'm more as a consumer. I'm always interested, like when I look at the labeling of things and some of the verbiage that they put on it. Like I've seen it before where they will list some type of a certification, and then you go to research, and you're like, that certification doesn't mean anything in terms of product
Exactly.
packaging. But that's what you just said is a perfect example of that. And that's something I think in terms of I'm all about consumer protecting the consumer with product labeling, with accuracy of CBD. And I think that we should do a podcast talking about those different types of products and CBDs. But then I think another one we could also talk about to help our audience too is maybe just some purchasing suggestions, like just to ensure that what they're buying is the right thing, and just some tips as they're out there, because that's something I do quite a bit. I like to go into some of the stores and just see what some of the companies are out there labeling, and the person at the counter, what they're telling you. Just because I think in part it's such an exciting time to be getting into this space, and for the consumers, they need to know some of these things. And I do have some pet peeves too in terms of how some products are labeled that I would like to share. I won't call the company out, but I think we'll just we don't want to end up with an email for slander.
Like a black swatch across
Yeah, I'll wrap it with
here's your
something.
don't.
Say, see, you don't want to do this. Well, and I'll give you an example. I can't remember the name of the store that I was in. Well, I should name the store regardless. But it fully labeled a full spectrum CBD oil, this full spectrum CBD oil. And when I looked at it, it said contains no THC. And so therefore it was probably one that was probably more of like an isolate or something out of nature. So when I asked, I said, well, it says full spectrum on here, but it says 0 inches. And the associate was like, oh yeah, we just put the full spectrum on there because it sells better. So
I think that's why people complain about Tinder.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, that's too funny. Do you have any examples you'd like to share, Kim?
No. But out of all honesty, I've heard them.
But I think those could make for some interesting shows and podcasts. And then we're also going to, as I shared with you, we're going to start experiencing some different technologies to allow call-ins. I think it'll be a lot of fun to allow our audience to call in and participate. I always like that interactive feel to doing podcasts.
Yeah, of course. I think it'd be fun just bringing someone on and, well, do we have a delay or anything? It's our podcast. We can say what we want.
Yeah, and I think that the screen would come on as they're calling in, that there's like a mute feature. So it wouldn't be a delay, but they would only fire off maybe one word or two. Yeah. And then I don't want to have to go back and edit it. Maybe we need to rethink that process.
I think that'd be hilarious. By the control of God.
Delete. Yeah, but no. So in regards to the conference, it was a success, and I'm glad that you made it back home and all those kind of good things. Anything else on your radar coming up for this coming week or this month?
Honestly, it is gearing up for the end of year. When I was in sales, the I'll never forget. He would start it around the new year. He'd say, "Before you know it, it's Halloween." And if you've ever been in sales, that is before you know it, it's Halloween, and nothing happens between Halloween and the new year. So it's pretty much gearing up for the new year and finishing up
Yeah, time to start,
2019.
trying to start looking at those marketing and business plans for 2020. I can't believe we're saying that already, but yeah,
I
it's
know.
literally here, so, but
But I would like to say,
yeah,
how we started with about the hair. I
yes.
So many people. This is a challenge I would like to. I hope more people do. Instead of shaving their hair in solidarity, uh, which I think is wonderful, and it comes from the heart for sure. Um, but how about for those who can, let your hair grow? Just let it grow out and give it some time, say a year and a half, and then that's when you shave it off.
hmm hmm
So you can get it nice and close, and you have more of the inches to donate.
And that can make a huge difference to impact an individual who needs that. So yeah, definitely. If you want to do me a favor and maybe send the link or to the organization, and I can put that in the video description as well, and that way people can visit that and learn more. So Kim, don't you do me a favor? Why don't you go ahead and plug your sites, plug your social handles, so that way our listeners can learn more about you and your work.
Absolutely, and thank you. We are at Harvest and Plume for all the social media. Social media. Uh, I was going to say I sounded like Trump, but I'm just slurring through. Not good, bad. It's just indifferent. Harvest and Plume for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the Canna sessions for Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and I'm sorry, Instagram as well. And YouTube is combined Harvest and Plume, and I guess that's it.
Yep,
Oh, and
that's it.
Pipeline Strategies, yeah.
In the Pipeline Strategies, absolutely, on Twitter, yes. And this is Carlos with Rogue 420. Visit rogue420.net for all your information in regards to hemp, cannabis, advocacy. And again, Kim, thank you once again. We'll be back next Thursday at 5 p.m. It's a real quick inside baseball story. So yesterday, I lost track of time and I was panicking, and I wasn't sure if we were going to do a show or not. So I'm texting Kim on Wednesday saying, "Hey, are we going to do a show?" Because knowing that I was potentially going to be even later than they scheduled time, and then didn't get a response. And like 15 minutes later, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Wednesday, not Thursday.
I was just coming down, so you hear all the phones lighting up.
Yeah.
And yours came in, and I just saw the brief. It was like, my bad.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So for our Rogue 420 fans, again, please make sure to check out Harvest and Plume. Please also make sure to go over to the Canna Sessions on Facebook and stay tuned. So lots of interesting podcasts coming up. We appreciate you listening. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And Kim, we'll catch you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.